I sat alone in my spacious office at the headquarters of Cortez Holdings, in the heart of bustling Chicago. The harsh white neon lights cast down on my desk, making everything around me feel colder than ever. I am Tony Ramirez, 34 years old, the chief operating officer of this corporation. Over the past 6 years, I had poured all my youth and energy into this place, turning it into a colossal machine that no one could stop. But today, everything felt different. My hand gripped the phone tightly, my thumb mechanically scrolling across the screen before pressing call. The number belonged to my father-in-law, Manuel Cortez, 62 years old, the chairman of the corporation. He was the one who held everything, power, money, and even my life. My heart pounded furiously, not because of work-related anxiety, but because of the agony tearing me apart inside. I had just received news from my younger brother Diego that my biological father, Carlos Ramirez, had passed away. He was a poor mechanic in Ohio, who had spent his entire life in a small auto repair shop, his back hunched from years of heavy labor. Cancer had tormented my father for 2 full years, and just a few hours ago it had taken him from me forever. I hadn't made it back in time to be by his side, to hold his hand or hug him one last time. Tears welled up, but I forced myself to swallow them back. When the call connected and Manuel's voice came through on the other end, I tried to keep my voice as steady as possible. I began, my voice slightly trembling but still trying to maintain composure. "Father, I just heard from my brother. My biological father, Mr. Carlos, has passed away due to his illness. He died this morning. I'm requesting 4 days off to return home for the funeral arrangements and aftermath. I'll hand over all important tasks to the team and ensure nothing is disrupted." I paused, waiting. Inside, my heart twisted in pain as if someone were squeezing it tightly. I imagined Manuel would inquire, offer condolences, even if it was just a polite remark. But no. On the other end, there was only cold silence, stretching long enough that I could clearly hear my own breathing. Not a word of comfort, not a single question about Mr. Carlos, the man who had raised me. Just an empty void. Manuel sighed as if I were bothering him. "Tony, I heard you. But your personal matters. Put them aside for now. The company is in a sensitive period. You can't just leave. The family is all away on vacation. No one can replace you. You have to stay." I was stunned. His words hit me like a punch to the face. "But Father, it's only 4 days. I'll arrange everything." He cut me off, his voice sharp as a knife. "I said no, and I mean no. Your responsibility is here with the corporation. All personal matters must be set aside. Even your father's funeral is no exception. The company needs you to keep it running, not to deal with personal issues." I felt my throat tighten as if a stone were lodged there. My hand holding the phone trembled slightly, but I still tried to maintain the familiar calm demeanor, the exterior I had honed over 6 years to survive in this world. I whispered my obedience, even though inside I was screaming. The call ended in absolute coldness. I sat motionless in the vast room, the white lights casting down on my pale face after many sleepless nights. My eyes blurred from exhaustion and pain. My father was gone, and I wasn't even allowed to go say goodbye to him. I looked around the office, the gleaming glass walls, the desk piled high with documents, and the computer screen still flickering with hundreds of unread emails. This had once been a place I was proud of, where I thought I was building my future. But now, it felt like nothing more than a luxurious prison. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself, then dialed my wife, Isabella Ramirez. She is 32 years old, the marketing director of the company, and at that moment she was enjoying a lavish vacation with the family at some beach resort. I placed my last fragile hope in this call. Perhaps she would understand, comfort me, and speak to her father on my behalf. We had been married for 5 years, even though the marriage was largely based on business interests, but I still believed there was some genuine affection there. The phone rang a few times, then Isabella's voice came through, sounding cheerful and distant. "Tony? Why are you calling at this hour? I'm in the middle of a party here." I spoke, my voice hoarse. "Isabella, my father has passed away. I need to go to Ohio for the funeral. I just asked your father for permission, but he refused. Can you talk to him for me? Just 4 days. There was a pause. Not a choked, emotional pause, but an empty one, as if she had just heard someone complain about a power outage in the neighborhood. Isabella's voice remained unchanged. I'm sorry about him, but Mr. Carlos's funeral has nothing to do with me. I have no authority and I don't want to interfere with my father's decision. My heart felt as if someone were crushing it. I could hear my own breathing growing heavier, hotter. My entire body went strangely cold. I whispered, my throat choking, "But you're my wife." It hurts so much, Bella. I just need you to stand by me, even a little. On the other end, a scoff escaped, light but sharp, enough to tear apart my last sliver of hope. Isabella's voice was ice cold, full of disdain. Tony, listen to my father. For the good of the company. Your personal matters can't take priority over work. The company needs you there. Don't complicate things further. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. The hand holding the phone shook. I said, I just need 4 days. 4 days to bury my father. I didn't even get to see him one last time. Isabella's voice grew sharper, impatient. Tony, you're overreacting. Stay in Chicago. Don't embarrass me in front of the family. She hung up. Not a single question. Not a breath of sorrow. Not the slightest hint of being a wife. It was just me, sitting motionless in the freezing office, staring at the black screen of the phone and realizing I was utterly alone in my own marriage. I was completely speechless. Every retort stuck in my throat, leaving only the feeling of betrayal and abandonment. Isabella, the woman I had once thought was my support, now saw me as nothing more than a cog in her family's machine. I lowered the phone, my trembling hand placing it on the desk. The office was oppressively silent, broken only by the ticking of the clock reminding me that time was passing. I sat quietly in this place where I had poured my entire youth and strength, realizing that in this family I was nothing more than a tool for operations. Nothing more, nothing less. My mind was blank, like an endless void. The pain of losing my father was still there, twisting in sharp spasms. But now it mingled with the bitterness from those 2 consecutive phone calls. Mr. Manuel, my father-in-law, with his voice as cold as a block of stone. Isabella, my wife, with her indifference that shattered my heart. They were not family, they were slave masters, and I was a slave in a polished suit. I looked out the window. Chicago tonight was immersed in neon lights, but to me it was nothing more than a dark maze. How many more years would I have to endure this? How many more sacrifices in exchange for contempt? At that very moment, the intercom phone rang sharply, pulling me out of my chaotic thoughts. I glanced at the screen, human resources. My heart beat faster. A bad premonition rushed in. I took a deep breath, picked up the receiver, trying to keep my voice calm. Tony Ramirez speaking. The voice on the other end belonged to a young secretary I recognized, speaking in a flat, rehearsed tone. Mr. Tony, I'm calling on direct instructions from senior management regarding your leave request to return to Ohio. Chairman Manuel Cortez has decided not to approve it. The company is in a critical phase and you are the primary operator. We cannot be without you at this time. I gripped the armrest of my chair tightly, trying to swallow. I understand, but this is my father's funeral. Just 4 days. She continued, her voice devoid of any emotion. I'm only relaying the message, Mr. Tony. If you leave without authorization, you will be immediately demoted. You could even be terminated for serious disciplinary violation. Senior management emphasizes that responsibility to the corporation must come first. Those words were the final knife blow, slashing into the limits of what I could endure. I hung up without another word, my entire body numb. Termination? Just because I wanted to go say goodbye to my father? I slumped back into my chair, my mind spinning, my heartbeat pounding. If I stayed, I would lose my soul. If I left, I would lose the career I had built over 6 years. But this pain, this injustice, it was pushing me right to the edge of a decision I could no longer avoid. In that wave of bitterness, memories flooded back like an old film reel playing in slow motion. 6 years ago, when I first stepped into Cortez Holdings. I was 28 then, full of passion, having just graduated with an outstanding MBA. Isabella introduced me to her father, and Mr. Manuel looked at me as if I were a promising commodity. He said, "I see potential in you. Prove it to everyone." And I did. I worked day and night, averaging 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. Rest was not in my vocabulary. Weekends? That was when I sat in the office clearing backlog paperwork. Holidays? I stayed behind to ensure everything ran smoothly while my wife's family jetted off to Europe or the Caribbean. Every critical contract passed through my hands. I remember the 2020 financial crisis when the pandemic hit. I stayed awake for 3 straight nights restructuring the supply chain. I called suppliers in the middle of the night, negotiated with partners over Zoom with bloodshot eyes from lack of sleep. The result? The corporation survived and even grew strongly. And me? I got a pat on the shoulder from Mr. Manuel and a modest bonus compared to what they profited. Meanwhile, my wife's family lived in luxury. Mr. Manuel and Mrs. Rosa, Isabella's mother, constantly partied at upscale restaurants and traveled on private yachts. Isabella shopped without restraint, designer handbags, expensive spa trips. They enjoyed the fruits of the labor I shouldered while I gradually burned out. In the company, I was nothing more than a high-paid employee, a tool being wrung dry over the years. They called me son-in-law, but in reality I was just the operator, the savior of their empire. 6 years of endurance, 6 years of silence, 6 years of placing work responsibilities above my personal life. I had to set aside even the smallest pleasures, a coffee with friends, a weekend fishing trip, even my own birthday, all to devote myself to Cortez Holdings. I clearly remember the first time my father fell seriously ill 2 years ago. Mr. Carlos was hospitalized after a sudden heart attack. I was in the middle of an important meeting and Mr. Manuel said, "Stay here. Your brother can handle things at home. If you go, who will take care of the company?" I could only stand in my office and call to check on him, my voice trembling. "Dad, I'll come visit you soon." But no, the project swept me away. Each time I told myself, just get through one more project, one more peak period, and I'll arrange to visit Dad. But those promises were repeatedly swallowed by work. My father understood. He didn't blame me. "I know you're busy, son. It's okay, I'm fine." His voice was weak over the phone, but I knew he was lonely. Diego, my younger brother, was there for him more, but I, the eldest son, was absent. And now, on the day he passed, all I received was a prohibition on leave and a threat of termination. My endurance had officially reached its final limit. My heart pounded furiously. Cold sweat broke out. I realized that if I stayed, I would lose both my dignity and my last remaining family. My father was gone, and if I didn't go, I would regret it for the rest of my life. Excitement surged. This decision could destroy everything, but not making it meant I was already dead inside. I looked around the office one last time. The cold glass walls, the piled-up documents. Enough. Right at my desk, I opened my computer and drafted my resignation letter. My hands trembled as I typed each word. To the Board of Directors of Cortez Holdings, I, Tony Ramirez, hereby resign from my position as Chief Operating Officer effective today. Reason: urgent personal matters and inability to continue contributing. Short and decisive. I didn't need to explain at length. I was personally closing 6 years of working for my wife's family. I hit send, and it was done. No turning back. After sending the letter, I quietly opened my browser and booked a flight to Ohio. The earliest one without hesitation. The ticket confirmation appeared on the screen and I felt a slight relief mixed with fear. Anxiety. What would their reaction be? Mr. Manuel would rage. Isabella would call and berate me. But at that moment, I didn't care. I quickly gathered the few personal items left in the office. An old coffee mug, a couple of family photos, my notebook. It felt like leaving an invisible prison where the chains had been responsibility and blind loyalty. I walked out of the office, turned off the lights, and locked the door. The hallway was empty, only the echo of my shoes. The elevator took me down to the ground floor, and when the doors opened, the cold Chicago night wind rushed in. I left the Cortez Holdings headquarters building late into the night, carrying the pain of losing my father and a complete severance from my wife's family. My footsteps were heavy, as if dragging a massive boulder behind me. 6 years poured down the drain, yet in this moment I felt no regret, only an emptiness spreading through me like an endless void in my chest. I walked toward the parking garage where my car sat alone under the dim yellow lights. Chicago tonight was alive with the endless flow of late afternoon traffic, but to me, everything was blurred and distant. I got in, started the engine, and drove toward the apartment, merging into the rushing stream of people. On the way home, my phone kept vibrating relentlessly like an unending storm. The screen lit up and went dark again and again. Calls from Mr. Manuel, from Mrs. Rosa, Isabella's mother, and from Isabella herself. I glanced over, their names flashed, but I didn't answer a single one. Messages poured in like rain. Tony, return to the company immediately. This is an order. From Mr. Manuel. What the hell are you doing? Explain that idiotic resignation right now. From Mrs. Rosa, her contempt dripping even through text. Have you lost your mind? Walking away from your position when the company is in crisis? You're betraying the family. From Isabella. I watched the screen light up and fade over and over, but I didn't reply to anyone. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, my eyes fixed straight ahead, leaving all the pressure behind me. Horns blared around me, headlights glared, but I drove like an automaton through the familiar streets. To me now, every command, every demand, every threat had lost all meaning. They were just whispers in the wind, unable to touch the real pain in my heart. My father was gone, and they hadn't even granted me the chance to say goodbye. Anxiety surged. Would they send someone to my apartment? Would Isabella fly back immediately to confront me? But I pushed those thoughts away and focused on the road. I had made my choice, and I would not turn back. When I reached the apartment, I pushed the door open, exhausted yet resolute. This luxury home, with its elegant furniture hand-picked by Isabella, now felt completely foreign. The automatic lights flicked on, illuminating abstract paintings on the walls, but they offered no warmth at all. I quickly packed the essentials. A few simple changes of clothes, personal documents like my passport and savings book, and the handful of keepsakes I still had. The old watch my father gave me when I turned 20, its glass face scratched by time. A small family photo. Me, Diego, and Dad smiling brightly beside the repair shop. Each item was like a knife reminding me of what I had lost and what I now had to reclaim. Once packed, I dragged the suitcase to the door and turned off all the lights. The apartment sank into darkness, and I locked the door without looking back. My heart beat faster as I drove straight to the airport, night fully descending over the city. Chicago glittered with the lights of skyscrapers, but to me it was already the past. The highway was crowded, cars speeding past, and I wove through them trying to stay calm. I parked in long-term parking, pulled my suitcase into the terminal, and checked in quickly. The ticket was already booked, the red-eye flight to Ohio. As the plane lifted off from Chicago for the first time in years, I let my body relax, leaning back in the seat and allowing the emotions to flood in. The engines roared, the cabin was dimly lit, and I closed my eyes, feeling relief mixed with pain. No more urgent emails, no more endless meetings, no more orders from the Cortez family. Only me, flying back to my father. In that moment, all I longed for was to get there quickly, to see my father one last time, to stand before his coffin and say the things left unsaid, to fulfill the final duty of a son. Dad, I know it's too late, but I'm sorry, I whispered in my mind, tears rolling down my cheeks. The plane shook slightly in the wind, and I gripped the armrest tightly, anxiously wondering, is Diego okay? Has the funeral already begun? Memories of my childhood came back one by one like an old film playing in slow motion. The image of my single father, back bent from labor, working from dawn till dusk in that little Ohio repair shop to raise my brother and me. My father, Carlos, a thin man with hands calloused and stained with grease. He rose before sunrise when the sky was still dark to open the shop. The sound of hammers striking metal, engines roaring. Those were the sounds of my childhood. He fixed cars for neighbors, for long-haul truckers passing through, sometimes working late into the night just to earn enough for tomorrow's meals. I remember our simple but filling meals. Dinner was often just cold-cut sandwiches, boiled vegetables, and a glass of warm milk. Dad sat at the head of the table and smiled. "Eat up, boys. Only if you're strong will you be able to stand tall in this world." He always saved the best pieces for Diego and me, taking only a small bite for himself. Some nights he stayed up all night working on a job, the clang of metal echoing from the shop behind the house. The next morning, exhausted, he still managed to hand us money for school fees. "Study hard. Don't end up like your old man," he'd say in his deep, warm voice. Diego and I ran around the shop wiping tools for him, but he always shooed us inside to do homework. When we were seriously ill, Dad was the only one who stayed by our bedside, never leaving our side. I remember when I was 10 and burning with fever. He held me all night, wiping sweat from my forehead, telling stories to distract me from the pain. He didn't sleep. His eyes were red from worry. "I'm right here, son. Be strong, okay?" he whispered. The same for Diego when he broke his arm falling off his bike. Dad rushed him to the hospital in our old junker and sat by his bed until morning. That man never once complained about his own life. He just quietly lived for his 2 sons. Mom had died early in an accident, and he carried everything alone. He never remarried, never sought his own happiness, only us. "You boys are my greatest treasure," he'd say whenever he hugged us. I closed my eyes in the airplane cabin, a wave of sorrow and regret rising inside me for all the years I had let work pull me too far from him. In 6 years in Chicago, I had visited only a handful of times, briefly. Every phone call he asked, "Are you okay, son? How's work?" I told him about my successes, but hid the exhaustion. He was proud. "My boy's done good. You haven't let me down." But deep down, I knew he was lonely. Diego told me Dad often sat alone in the shop looking at old photos. The thought that he had passed while I wasn't there, that he had waited for me in solitude during his final days, tightened my chest until I could barely breathe. Regret rose uncontrollably, impossible to hold back. The plane touched down in Ohio just as dawn was breaking. The dry screech of tires on the runway echoed sharply. I dragged my suitcase out of the cabin, the biting early morning air rushing in and stinging my skin. The small, familiar airport of my childhood now only stirred a quiet, pervasive sadness. Without waiting, I hailed a taxi at the exit, my voice hoarse. "St. Peter's Church, as fast as you can." The driver nodded without a word, and we sped onto the familiar road leading back to our little town. The scenery flashed past the window. Golden autumn cornfields, weathered wooden houses, and far off, the church steeple rising against a fiery pink sky. My heart beat faster with every mile, pounding with the anxious feeling of standing before a door I could never walk back through. "Dad, I'm home. But why did it have to be so late?" When the taxi stopped in front of the church, I threw the driver his money and stumbled out on trembling legs. The moment I looked up, I saw Diego standing on the church steps in the distance. My younger brother, taller than I remembered, hair messy, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He wore a simple black suit and held a small bouquet of white flowers, standing there like a lonely statue in the vast churchyard. Everything I had bottled up, exhaustion, grief, and the pain of the long night, burst open all at once. I ran toward him, abandoning my suitcase on the ground, and threw my arms around my brother, sobbing uncontrollably. My cries rang out in the quiet morning like a river that had been dammed for years finally breaking free. "Diego, I'm sorry, I got here too late," I choked out, shoulders shaking. Diego said nothing at first. He simply wrapped his arms around me tightly and let me pour out everything I had held inside for so long. He patted my back gently, his warm breath on my shoulder. We stood there embracing for a long time in the chilly morning churchyard, dry autumn leaves swirling around us in the wind. The air was heavy. Only the distant chirping of sparrows and the rustle of leaves could be heard. For the first time in years, I felt true closeness. Not with the Cortez family, but with my own flesh and blood. Diego, the brother who had stayed by Dad's side in his final days, was now my only anchor. Anxiety mingled with relief. We still had each other even though Dad was gone. When the storm of emotion finally subsided and the tears dried on my cheeks, we let go and sat on the church steps. Diego looked at me, eyes red but voice steady. "You came. That's what matters. Dad was waiting for you." We spoke briefly about Dad's final hours. Diego's voice was low and sorrowful. "He went peacefully, Tony. Last night he was still asking about you, saying, 'Tony's busy, but he'll come.' The illness had worn him down for so long, but he never complained. He just wanted the two of us to be together again." I nodded, throat tight. Dad had waited for me, and I hadn't made it in time. We agreed to arrange Carlos's funeral exactly as he had wished while he was alive. Simple, dignified, and respectful. No extravagance, no ostentation. Just like the quiet life he had lived. "Dad always said a funeral is for seeing someone off, not for showing off," Diego said. I nodded again, my heart heavy. That morning, the two of us busied ourselves inside St. Peter's Church. The little church with its old wooden pews and plain altar had been part of Dad's life forever. We arranged white flowers around the casket, checked the prayer books, and prepared the liturgical items. I wiped the altar, my hands trembling as they touched the candles, memories flooding back of Sundays when Dad brought us here to pray. Diego handled the paperwork and called the priest to confirm the schedule. The bustle helped us momentarily forget the pain, though anxiety still crept in. Would many people come? Would everything go as Dad had hoped? Together we greeted Dad's old friends, co-workers from the repair shop, and neighbors who had known him for decades. They arrived in small groups, faces sorrowful, carrying simple bouquets. Mr. Joe, Dad's longtime colleague at the shop, gripped my hand tightly. Carlos was the best man I ever knew. He fixed my car for free more times than I can count. Mrs. Mary from next door hugged Diego and cried, "He used to bring bread over for my kids. Now," I nodded, holding back tears, ushering them inside. Each person shared a small, warm memory of Dad, and every story cut deeper. My anxiety grew as the casket became more visible. Dad lay there peaceful but no longer breathing. The funeral was quiet and understated, exactly like Carlos's life. The priest began the prayers, his warm voice echoing through the nearly empty church. We knelt, hands clasped, listening. "Lord, receive the soul of Carlos Ramirez, who lived a humble and loving life." The church bell tolled, solemn and still. I looked at the casket, tears spilling again. "Dad, I never got to say thank you." Diego sat beside me, squeezing my hand in silent comfort. The air was thick with sorrow, broken only by murmured prayers and the wind outside the windows. When the casket was carried to the cemetery, Diego and I walked silently behind it, hearts aching. We helped shoulder the coffin with a few neighbors, our steps heavy on the dirt path behind the church. The cold wind blew. Leaves fell in swirls, and the sky hung gray as if in mourning. I stared at the simple wooden coffin engraved with Dad's name, my chest tightening. This was the last time Dad would walk with us. Anxiety surged. The lowering into the grave was coming, and I wasn't ready. The burial itself was unbearably heavy. The sound of earth hitting the coffin lid made my chest constrict. The priest spoke the final words, then the casket was lowered into the deep hole. Each shovelful of dirt thudded dully against the wood. I dropped to my knees, clutching handfuls of soil, tears streaming. Diego stood beside me, shoulders trembling. Those around us quietly scattered flowers, but for me, the world had stopped. The pain cut like a knife, a mix of dread and despair. Dad was truly gone. After the burial, the two of us stood for a long time before Dad's grave, saying nothing. The fresh mound was marked by a stone that read, "Carlos Ramirez, beloved father." The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the smell of damp earth. I bowed my head for a long while in late farewell, whispering in my heart, "I promise I'll live well and take care of Diego." Diego stood silently beside me, the only support I had left, his hand resting on my shoulder. When everyone else had quietly left and the cemetery grew still, only the two brothers remained before Dad's grave. We lingered a little longer, letting the wind carry away some of the pain, then finally turned away. Together, Diego and I left the cemetery and walked in silence back to Dad's old house, the place where every memory of our childhood still lived intact. In the days following the funeral, Diego and I decided to stay on in Dad's old house, slowly cleaning and sorting through every room, handling the simple objects that had been part of Carlos's humble life. We took our time, as if trying to hold on to the last traces of his warmth. We started with the cramped living room where Dad used to sit in the evenings reading the newspaper. I dusted the worn-out sofa, its fabric threadbare, and suddenly remembered those afternoons when he sat right there, telling us stories about the trucks he'd fixed that day. Diego swept the kitchen where the pots and pans still bore the marks of countless frugal meals. Every single item in the house triggered a memory that squeezed my heart. The wooden cabinet Dad had built himself in the corner of the bedroom, its drawers creaking as they opened. I pulled one out and found his old tools in a little notebook where he'd recorded every penny of monthly expenses. He had saved every dime, every cent by cent, so we could go to school. "Dad, why did you live so hard?" I whispered, running my fingers over the rough wood. Then we moved to the small oil-stained repair shop in the backyard, Dad's true kingdom where he had spent most of his life. Together we cleaned the tools, wrenches, hammers, and engine parts scattered everywhere. The smell of grease and dust made me cough, but it also brought back the image of Dad bent over under the flickering fluorescent light, working late into the night. During breaks, the two of us sat quietly on the porch, sharing small memories of Dad, things from long ago and things we would never get to say. We brewed 2 cups of the strong black coffee he always drank, then sat staring at the backyard where he used to work in the afternoon sun. Diego gave a faint smile, his voice low as the memories returned. "Remember when Dad taught you to drive?" He stood there with his hands on his hips and said, "Easy on the pedal, son. Life is like driving. You've got to be careful." I laughed through the tears. "And he taught me how to patch a tire," Diego added. "He said, sometimes life goes flat, but you've got to know how to fix it." We laughed, but tears rolled down our faces. The little memories. Dad staying up all night when we were sick, selling his own things to buy us school books. Quietly beaming with pride when I graduated college. But there were also things left unsaid. "I never got to thank him for everything," I whispered. Diego squeezed my hand. He knew, Tony. He always knew. The air was heavy yet warm. This was the first time in years we had truly been close, with no jobs or distance between us. The longer I stayed in that house, the clearer my regret became for all the years I had let work pull me away from Dad. Every morning I woke to birds singing outside the window and thought about those 6 years at Cortez Holdings, sleepless nights, endless meetings, the promises to visit Dad that I kept postponing. Just one more project, I had told myself, but one project turned into another and Dad waited alone. Diego noticed my silence. "Don't blame yourself, bro." Dad understood, but I couldn't stop. Anxiety rose inside me. Could I ever make it up to him? What would my life look like now that I had resigned? The Cortez family was still out there, like a ghost haunting me. During this time, my phone kept ringing. Manuel, Rosa, Isabella. Unlike on the drive home when I had ignored them, now I answered. I was no longer afraid. I wanted to face them, to hear every harsh word and let it strengthen my resolve. The first call was from Manuel, his voice growling through the speaker. "Tony, where the hell are you? Get back to Chicago right now." The company is in chaos because you walked out in the middle of a crisis. You're irresponsible. I listened calmly, heart steady. Rosa called next, shrill and venomous. You've betrayed our family. We lifted you from nothing and now you run off because of some old man in Ohio. Come back and make amends. They kept pressing. The company needs you. The whole group will collapse without you. Don't let personal feelings destroy everything. I answered briefly. I've resigned. Don't call me again. The call from Isabella was the hardest blow. She rang in the evening, voice full of rage and crocodile tears. Tony, what are you doing? Abandoning our marriage because of Carlos? Abandoning everything we built together? You're so selfish. I froze. My body went weak. I collapsed into a chair, phone pressed to my ear, unable to speak. She went on, sharp as a blade. You chose your father over this family. If you're not back in Chicago by the end of the week, I'm filing for divorce. It's over. Everything. You'll lose the apartment, the money, all of it. The threat cut deep, but for the first time I saw the truth. Our marriage had always been a business contract. There was never love, only profit. Isabella never loved me. She loved the status and money that came with Cortez Holdings. I whispered, You're right, and I choose my father. She screamed and hung up. Anxiety spiked. Divorce? I was ready, but the pain still lingered. After days of relentless calls, I finally turned the phone off completely and cut all contact with my wife's family. I tossed it into a drawer, feeling as if I had dropped a ton of bricks from my shoulders. Diego looked at me. You okay? I nodded. I'm free now. We kept cleaning, and life in Ohio slowly grew quieter, even though the grief for Dad remained. About 2 weeks after the funeral, Diego and I received a call from the lawyer representing Carlos, asking us to come to his office for the reading of the will. We were surprised. Dad had lived so simply, we assumed he'd left nothing but the house and the shop. Probably just paperwork, Diego said as we drove downtown. The office was small, smelling of old paper and coffee. Mr. Jenkins, the lawyer, greeted us politely. Please sit. Mr. Carlos drew up a will 2 years ago. We sat there expecting nothing more than routine legal formalities. Then he announced that Carlos Ramirez had quietly saved and invested throughout his life, leaving an estate worth approximately $1 million. Mr. Jenkins read clearly. Through savings accounts, stable stocks, and a few small real estate holdings. The entire amount is to be divided equally between his 2 sons, Tony and Diego Ramirez, as per his final wishes. We sat stunned, mouths open, unable to believe it. Dad, who had lived hand-to-mouth, worn the same old clothes and fixed cars for a living. How could he have $1 million? Is this real? I stammered, hands shaking as I took the documents. Diego was just as shocked. Dad hid this from us? The lawyer nodded. He wanted it to be a surprise, so you could both start a new life. The news left us speechless. The father who had toiled his whole life in overalls had secretly built a fortune for us. A wave of gratitude, sorrow, and regret washed over me. Even at the end, Dad had silently prepared a future for his sons without us ever knowing. He had sacrificed everything, saved every dollar from wrench turning, invested wisely, and never bragged. Dad, why didn't you tell us? I whispered, tears spilling again. Anxiety and awe mingled. What did this money mean? Freedom, yes, but also a final reminder of his endless love and sacrifice. We hugged each other and cried in that little office. The will wasn't just money. It was Dad's love made tangible. The last gift from a father who had given us everything without ever asking for anything in return. We left the lawyer's office in a complete daze, driving back to Dad's old house while our minds spun with the figure of $1 million. Diego gripped the steering wheel. I sat beside him, staring out the window, seeing nothing but the image of Dad sitting alone under a dim oil lamp, quietly balancing his books. How had he done it? Fixing cars for hire, eating frugally, investing in stocks or funds that no one ever knew about. I remembered the times he refused new clothes, saying, I'm fine with the old ones. The money is for you boys. Now it was clear. He had provided for us right up to his very last breath. Regret surged like an underground river rushing beneath a calm surface. How much had I missed? For 6 years in Chicago, I thought I was building a future, when in reality I was losing the present with my father. When we got home, we sat silently on the porch for a while, letting the evening breeze carry away some of the heaviness. Diego put a hand on my shoulder. Tony, Dad wanted us to use it to live well. Don't overthink it. But I couldn't help it. That money was a gift from the past, yet also a burden. The burden of sacrifices I had never repaid. That night, as a way to feel close to Dad again, we decided to cook a simple dinner in his old kitchen. The evening after the will was read, Diego and I ate dinner together in Dad's kitchen. The quiet a stark contrast to the mourning crowds of the past few days. No more crying, no more neighbors coming to pay respects, just the two of us beneath the single yellow bulb dangling from the ceiling. We made Dad's favorite meal. Beef stew with toasted bread, as humble as the dinners he used to make for us. The smell of food filled the air, bringing back memories of evenings when Dad came home late from the shop, still forcing a tired smile. The meal was simple but emotionally heavy. Both of us carried unspoken thoughts. I watched Diego eat slowly, eyes fixed on his plate as if lost in thought. I was the same. Every bite came with a pang of guilt about the will. $500,000 each. Enough to start over, yet so painfully bittersweet. After a long silence broken only by the lonely clink of spoons against plates, I finally spoke. Diego, I need to tell you everything about Chicago, about what really happened. My voice was hoarse but resolute. I told him the whole story. The refusal of bereavement leave, the threats of dismissal, the pressure to return, Isabella's divorce ultimatum. I described every detail. The cold call from Manuel, Isabella's indifference, HR's menacing notice, and my sudden resignation. They treated me like a money-making machine, little brother. Dad died and I wasn't even allowed to come home. Isabella called me selfish for choosing Dad over the company. My voice cracked, my hand clenched around the water glass. Diego listened in silence, fist tightening with every sentence, rage clear on his face. He had always been the calm one, an economic crime prosecutor, but now his eyes were red and his jaw clenched. Tony, they're unbelievable. Dad died and they still... He stopped, breathing hard, trying to control his anger. I admitted that walking away from the company was the first time in my life I had put Dad and myself above the interests of my wife's family. I endured it for 6 years, Diego. Worked like a madman, sacrificed everything. But this time I chose Dad. I chose us. I don't regret it. Saying it aloud lifted a weight off my chest. Diego nodded, eyes shining with pride. Dad would be so happy you chose family over work. Then after a deep breath, Diego, speaking now as the economic crime prosecutor, revealed something that hit me like lightning. Tony, I didn't tell you earlier because I didn't want you to worry, but Cortez Holdings is under investigation. I'm part of the team. I froze, my plate of food growing cold in front of me. He lowered his voice as if someone might be listening. Early signs point to serious financial wrongdoing. Tax evasion through shell companies, falsified financial statements, even labor law violations and exploitation of employees. We have indirect evidence from business partners, but it's not enough yet. The case could stall without solid internal proof, original data from inside the company's systems, real invoices, internal emails, unedited reports. That was exactly what the investigators were missing. Decisive internal evidence. Without it, the whole investigation might collapse. We need someone on the inside, Tony. Someone who knows the systems inside out. My heart pounded. I, the former chief operating officer, knew every corner of that machine. A fierce internal battle raged inside me. 6 years as the Cortez son-in-law versus the son who had just lost his father. On one side, the career, the marriage to Isabella, the familiar life in Chicago. On the other, Dad, Diego, justice. I remembered the shady deals I had witnessed, the unexplained expenses, the financial reports I had been told to fix without asking questions. The times Manuel called me into his office and said, "Take care of this report, don't ask too many questions." The altered numbers, the fake contracts. Back then I had stayed silent out of fear of losing my job. Now everything was crystal clear. They really broke the law?" I whispered, hands trembling. After a long silence, the kitchen silent except for the ticking wall clock, I made my final decision. "Diego, I'll do it. I'll go back to the company as an insider and get the evidence." The words left my mouth and a jolt of electricity ran down my spine. This wasn't just a legal move, it was the complete final severance from my wife's family. I would return to Chicago, pretend to be remorseful, get my old job back, and quietly copy the data. The risk was enormous. If they discovered me, I could lose everything, maybe even my life. But Dad deserved justice, and I couldn't let that empire keep harming others. Diego looked at me for a long time, worried yet trusting. He knew that from this moment on, we were on the same side of the fight. "Tony, I'm worried for you. They're cunning foxes. But I believe in you. We'll do this together." He gripped my hand firmly, eyes burning with determination. We finished the meal in a tense but resolute atmosphere, the signal that a long, dangerous confrontation had officially begun. Our minds were already in Chicago. The plan. I would go back, apologize, get reinstated, then extract the evidence while Diego guided me from afar. Anxiety surged. Was I capable of this? Would Isabella suspect anything? Dad's old kitchen bore witness to the decision as if he were watching from above and giving his blessing. After that long evening strategizing with Diego, I flew back to Chicago carrying a steel resolve. I would swallow every insult, play the repentant dog, and uncover the whole truth from the inside. The plane touched down in the late afternoon. The familiar roar of traffic and the smell of city exhaust rushed in at once. I took a taxi straight to Cortez Holdings headquarters, no detour to the apartment. The gleaming glass tower sparkled in the sunset, but to me it looked like a fortress bristling with traps. My heart pounded harder as I rode the elevator to the top floor, the chairman's office. Anxiety spiked. How would they react? Could I pull off the remorseful act convincingly? I knocked and spoke, voice trembling just enough. "Father, Mother, I'm back." The office was vast, mahogany desk, expensive paintings on the walls. Manuel sat behind the desk, Rosa stood by the window. The moment they saw me, the insults and humiliation poured out like acid, branding me a traitor, an ingrate, a disgrace to the family. Manuel shot to his feet, face crimson. "Tony, you dare show your face here? You traitor! You walked out when the company was in chaos and left us to carry everything. Ungrateful wretch." Rosa cut in, voice shrill. "Who do you think you are? We gave you status, we gave you our daughter, we gave you everything. And you run off to Ohio to cry over that penniless old mechanic? You've shamed this family." They hammered the point that I had abandoned my post at the worst possible moment, an unforgivable sin. Do you have any idea how many contracts stalled without you? Employees panicking, partners calling nonstop. I kept my head bowed, silently swallowing every bitter word, offering no defense, no excuses. Each insult cut deep, but I clenched my jaw and endured. In front of them, I played the penitent son-in-law perfectly, begging, admitting fault, pleading to be allowed back. "Father, Mother, I was wrong. Grief over my father's death clouded my judgment. But I see my duty now. Please let me return and work twice as hard to make amends." My voice shook. I kept my head low, fists clenched at my sides. Inside I was screaming, but outwardly I was broken and submissive. At first Manuel raged, pacing the room, jabbing a finger in my face. "You think a simple apology fixes this? You destroyed our trust. We almost lost everything because of you." Rosa added venomously, "Don't even dream of coming back easily. You should be on your knees." Yet deep down they both knew the truth. For years, the entire operational machinery of Cortez Holdings had run on my shoulders alone. I knew every system from A to Z, supply chains, financial reports, everything. They hadn't found a worthy replacement, and my absence had pushed the company to the brink of serious disruption. I caught the quick glance Manuel shot Rosa, the flicker of hesitation. They hated me, but they needed me more. After nearly an hour of verbal lashings and humiliating conditions, Manuel finally relented. Fine, come back, but from now on you're under strict supervision. Every decision goes through me. Absolute obedience, no more freelancing. One more mistake and you're finished. He attached harsh terms. Constant monitoring and total submission to his orders. I accepted everything without a single objection. Yes, sir. Thank you for giving me a chance to make it right. The meeting ended in an atmosphere thick with contempt. I left the office drenched in cold sweat, but inwardly relieved. The first step had succeeded. Now came Isabella. That same night I returned to the apartment I shared with her. The luxury high-rise overlooking Lake Michigan felt like a gilded cage, colder than ever. I let myself in with the spare key. Isabella was in the living room, arms crossed, face dark with fury. The moment she saw me, she unleashed a torrent of scorn, treating my return as inevitable because without them, I was nothing. Tony, so you crawled back? Of course you did. Where else could you possibly go? Without us, you're just some grease monkey from Ohio. She stood and jabbed a finger in my face. You think you can disappear for a few days, cry over your dead father, then waltz back like nothing happened? You embarrassed me in front of my parents. She demanded I personally apologize to them again and return to work immediately to atone, even though I knew this marriage had been dead for years. Built on profit, not love, I kept playing the part. Bella, I've already apologized to your parents. I was wrong. I'm staying. I'll work to make it up to you. She snorted, called Manuel to confirm. Dad, he's back, just like you said. Only then did her hostility ease slightly, though the cold disdain remained. She turned on her heel and walked to the bedroom. Sleep on the sofa. Don't even think about getting into my bed. I collapsed onto the couch, exhausted to the bone, but my mind was razor sharp. Anxiety gnawed. Did she suspect anything? I looked around at the designer furniture and luxury trappings she had bought and realized it was all an illusion. The marriage was over, but I had to endure it a little longer to finish the job. The next morning, I officially returned to Cortez Holdings. I walked into the familiar office where I had poured 6 years of blood and sweat. Colleagues stared and whispered behind my back. Tony's back. Heard he got fired and begged to return. I forced a smile, sat at my old desk and started working, business as usual on the surface. Outwardly, I resumed my role perfectly, answering emails, leading meetings, signing contracts, everything exactly as before. But inside the system, I began moving. I logged into the internal servers exactly as I always had, but this time I copied files onto the concealed USB drive Diego had sent me. Suspicious financial reports, offshore wire transfers, doctored invoices. I knew what each one meant. My pulse raced every second. Was my computer being monitored? I worked slowly, carefully, never rushing. From the moment I stepped back into Cortez Holdings, I wasn't just risking exposure. I had placed my life, my future, and our entire counterattack on a gamble with no way out. But I was ready. In the days that followed my return to Cortez Holdings, I began quietly digging deeper into the company's core data layers. I moved slowly, making it look like routine report reviews, standard work for a COO. But with every login to the internal servers, I went a little further. First came the financial folders, massive Excel files containing millions of dollars in transactions. I still remember opening a file from last year for the first time. International wire transfers with no clear origin, labeled vaguely as consulting fees. My heart raced. This was exactly the money laundering trail Diego had described. I copied it quickly, encrypted it with the tool Diego had sent, then erased every trace. Day by day, I uncovered more. tax fraud through inflated expenses, shell companies in tax havens like the Cayman Islands used to move illicit funds, fake supplier contracts to siphon money, and systematic labor law violations, forcing employees into temporary contracts with no benefits or overtime pay. Each new discovery felt like an electric shock. I'll never forget opening Manuel's internal email chain, a thread with the family lawyer instructing him to alter tax reports to shave off $5 million. I sat frozen for minutes, hand trembling on the mouse. This wasn't just misconduct. This was organized crime. I had suspected it before, but now it was undeniable. My pulse hammered. If Manuel ever found out I was looking at these, I would simply disappear from Chicago, no questions asked. Every new file I copied into multiple encrypted backups and sent to Diego in small batches to avoid detection. I used burner emails from public cafes near the office or uploaded to the secure cloud Diego had set up. "Tony, this batch is gold," Diego texted after one transfer. "Crystal clear tax evasion. Keep copying and stay safe." I nodded alone in my office, stomach in knots. On the outside, I maintained the mask of the dutiful son-in-law, making Manuel's coffee in the morning, accepting every insult without protest, coming home on time, cooking dinner for Isabella, enduring her sneers. "You're lucky you crawled back, or I'd have let you sleep on the street." I forced a smile. "You're right, Bella. I'll make it up to you and the family." Inside, I was counting the days. This marriage was already dead. I was only wearing its corpse. After 3 long, nerve-wracking months, terabytes of data later, Diego gave the word, "We have enough. I'm submitting everything to the FBI and IRS." I exhaled in relief and dread. I sat in my office overlooking bustling Chicago, knowing the storm was about to hit. "Everything will be anonymous," Diego assured me, "but if it comes to it, I'll protect you." Then it happened. One morning while I was in a meeting, chaos erupted in the lobby. Uniformed officers with search warrants flooded in like a tidal wave. Computers were seized, documents confiscated, employees questioned. Manuel went white as a sheet. "What the hell is this? Why are the police here?" I stood there, feigning shock. My God, what's happening? But inside I knew the plan had worked. When they checked my computer, I felt my heart stop, but I had scrubbed every trace. They never suspected the family member. Within days, the scandals exploded across every outlet. Cortez Holdings rocked by massive fraud, millions in tax evasion. Shell companies abroad, illegal transfers through Swiss banks, ghost contractors, unpaid overtime. The whole rotten structure was laid bare. Key executives were summoned, questioned, and detained. Manuel was handcuffed in front of everyone, face ashen. "This is a conspiracy. Someone set me up." Rosa sobbed as she was led away. Isabella called me in hysterics. "Tony, what's going on?" "They arrested Dad." I answered with fake concern. "I don't know, sweetheart. I'll take care of it." My heart was ice. The trial came quickly. I sat in the public gallery, half hidden, watching Diego testify as prosecutor. My evidence, now official exhibits, was presented file by file, email by email. The judge's gavel fell. Tax fraud, money laundering, labor exploitation, guilty on all counts. Cortez Holdings was fined $48 million, ordered to pay over $22 million in back taxes, and placed under special financial supervision for 5 years. Manuel personally fined $9 million, Rosa $4.5 million, Isabella $1.8 million. The entire family under strict federal oversight. Manuel sat hunched, no longer the proud patriarch. Rosa wept uncontrollably. Isabella stared at me from across the courtroom, eyes burning with hatred. The media storm was relentless. Cortez empire collapses in scandal. Stock price plummeted from $50 to $5 in a week. Partners fled. Employees quit in droves, branches closed, debt piled up. The company was finished. One stormy night, long after the verdict, the 3 of them showed up at the small apartment I had quietly rented. They pounded on the door. I opened it, and they stormed in like a hurricane. Manuel charged forward, face purple with rage. You traitor! You collected the evidence, didn't you? You destroyed everything I built. We took you in, gave you status, gave you a life you could never have dreamed of. And this is how you repay us? A knife in the back? Rosa stepped closer, eyes blazing. Ungrateful dog. We dragged you out of that Ohio gutter, gave you our daughter, money, power, and you turn around and ruin us? You bit the hand that fed you. Isabella, trembling with fury and panic, screamed over the noise. Tony, how could you? You destroyed my parents, the company, our marriage, everything. All because of that old man. You're heartless. Their voices overlapped, shrill and chaotic. But I stood motionless, arms folded, watching them like strangers unloading their desperation. Then I spoke, calm and cold, every word a slap. You destroyed yourselves. I only brought the truth to light. Manuel lunged at me, eyes wild, ready to strangle me on the spot. I didn't flinch. Instead, I gently placed 2 folders on the coffee table. The sound of paper hitting wood cut through their fury like a gunshot. They froze. On the table, my signed resignation letter and the divorce papers. Already executed. Silence swallowed the room. Manuel's fists clenched white. Rosa's mouth opened, but no sound came. Isabella covered her lips, tears falling, but her eyes were wide with something new. Not grief, terror at losing control. I met their stares, voice low and steady. As of this moment, I am done. Done with the job, done with the marriage, done with this family. Every tie is cut. The room felt like a vacuum. Even the TV seemed muted. I turned my back and walked out, leaving behind a family that was finally collapsing. Not because of me, but because of the poison they had sown for decades. In that instant, as I closed the door on their stunned, broken faces, I realized they finally understood. I hadn't just exposed their crimes and brought their rotten empire down from the inside. I had severed the very last chain they thought they still held over me, and for the first time, they were the ones who were afraid. They left my apartment in stunned silence. No more threats, just the slam of the door echoing down the empty hallway. I stood there for a moment, staring at the 2 folders on the table, my resignation and the divorce papers, like twin talismans that had finally freed me from 6 years of hell. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from a strange, exhilarating sense of freedom, as if invisible chains had just snapped. Anxiety surged. What now? Cortez Holdings was collapsing, but my life was only just beginning. I called Diego immediately, voice hoarse. Diego, they know everything. I've filed for divorce and resigned. On the other end, Diego let out a long breath of relief. Tony, I'm so proud of you. Come home to Ohio. We'll start over together. I nodded in the dark living room, turned off the lights, packed my bags. Chicago was drenched in pouring rain that night, as if washing away every stain of the past. I drove to the airport, left the fake home behind without a backward glance. The plane took off, and this time I was flying toward real hope. Diego was waiting at the Ohio airport with a tired but warm smile. We hugged tightly, and on the drive back to Dad's old house, he brought up the inheritance. Tony, I've thought about it. I'm giving you my entire share, about $500,000, as startup capital. I know you can build something great. His words floored me. My hands tightened on the wheel. Diego, no. That's yours. Dad split it evenly. But he shook his head, voice firm. I'm a prosecutor. I'm set. You're the one who needs it, to start your own company, to prove them wrong. I looked at my little brother, tears threatening. He had always been like Dad, quietly sacrificial. That money wasn't just capital, it was a responsibility. I nodded. I promise I'll make it count. We'll do this together. Back at the old kitchen table, we made plans. Dad had given me a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. I used every dollar to found my own company in the field I knew best: logistics and supply chain management. The name was simple: Ramirez Logistics, a tribute to Dad. From day one, I built it lean, transparent, and disciplined. No extravagance, no waste, just efficiency and people first. The first office was a cheap warehouse on the outskirts of Chicago. I sat there for hours drawing org charts, budgeting, making sure everything was clean from the ground up. Unlike Cortez, where everything was hidden behind fraud, my company would stand for honesty. My hand shook with excitement the day I signed the first contract. A small client, but a solid step. "We're going to make it," I whispered to myself. Several key people who had worked under me at Cortez quit and followed me. They called and texted, "Tony, you were the best leader we ever had. We're with you." These were the engineers, finance specialists, the ones who had watched me carry the old company on my back. We met in coffee shops. They told me, "After you left, everything fell apart. Manuel fires people left and right, contracts are gone." I nodded. "Come build something new with me. Transparent, fair." They joined. 10 people at first, but elite. We worked from dawn to midnight, but this time for ourselves. Thanks to my reputation and proven track record, the first contracts came quickly. An old Cortez partner called, "Tony, I trust you. Switching to your company is the smartest move I've made." We celebrated the signed contract with hugs and cheers. It was just the beginning, but it was real. Meanwhile, Cortez Holdings sank deeper into crisis after my departure and the massive fines. News spread, tens of millions in penalties, stock in freefall, partners fleeing. Operations unraveled, delays, errors, mass resignations. Strategic contracts stalled or died completely. The family was drowning in legal battles and desperately trying to hold market share. Manuel held emergency meetings, but there was no one left to save them. Isabella tried to manage marketing, but she only knew how to spend, not build. Old colleagues told me, "They're going under, Tony." Then they noticed Ramirez Logistics rising fast. When Manuel realized I was the one behind it, he took it as a direct challenge. One morning, I got an anonymous call. "You think you can compete with me, Tony? You're dead." His voice dripped with venom. The war had begun. Cortez launched a ruthless campaign to crush me. Predatory pricing, selling below cost just to steal clients, threatening suppliers to cut me off, spreading smears. Ramirez Logistics was founded by a traitor, don't trust them. Local papers ran stories. Ex-Cortez exec starts rival firm, can he be trusted? Isabella was surely behind the PR attacks. I didn't hide. I fought back with strategy, service, and reputation. We kept prices competitive but profitable, obsessed over quality, on-time delivery, transparent costs, genuine customer care. I told the team, they play dirty. We play clean. Customers will see the difference. We sent letters to former partners. We left Cortez for ethical reasons. Give us a chance to earn your trust. Many came back. The two companies entered open, brutal commercial warfare. Every day was a battle. They blocked a supplier. I found a new one in Ohio. They spread rumors. I posted transparency reports on social media. Revenue swung wildly. There were weeks we nearly went bankrupt, but the team held. Slowly, steadily, we gained the upper hand. Cortez was bloated and wounded from scandal. We were agile and debt-free. Clients started saying, "With Ramirez, I sleep better than I ever did with Cortez Holdings." Then came the big one. A major supermarket chain switched their entire contract from Cortez to us for better service and stable pricing. The showdown between me and the Cortez family had entered a new phase. No more hidden knives, no more backstabbing. This was all-out war in the open market where every mistake cost money, reputation, and sometimes survival itself. I knew they would never stop attacking, and I knew I would never back down. For the first time, I was fighting with my own two hands, and without the name Cortez hanging over me. After years of relentless effort, my company grew steadily. Revenue rose consistently, and Ramirez Logistics carved out a solid place in the market. We moved from the tiny warehouse to a proper offices in downtown Chicago, hired more staff, and opened a branch in Ohio so I could be close to Diego. Revenue climbed from a few $100,000 in the first year to millions thanks to a lean model. Zero debt, zero fraud, customers first. I never forgot to remind the team in strategy meetings. We don't play dirty. Transparency is our strongest weapon. Clients came back and brought new ones. The press took notice. Ramirez Logistics, a rising star from the ashes of the Cortez scandal. Reading those articles, I felt no arrogance, only deep gratitude toward Dad and Diego. The anxiety of the early days had turned into quiet confidence, though I remained cautious, never forgetting the lessons of the past. Meanwhile, Cortez Holdings never recovered. They lost every major partner, cash flow collapsed, and the company officially filed for bankruptcy. The headlines blazed: Cortez Empire completely collapses, bankrupt after massive fraud scandal. Assets were sold off, branches shuttered, employees fled in waves. The operational chaos that began the day I resigned only worsened. Endless delays, mistakes, lawsuits from furious clients. The Cortez family struggled with endless legal consequences, fines, financial oversight, while watching their market share evaporate. Manuel, once the untouchable tycoon, appeared in photos looking gaunt, selling the mansion to pay debts. Rosa lived in seclusion, avoiding old friends. Isabella, once draped in luxury, lost every trace of glamour and now worked a regular office job, scraping by on monthly bills. Old colleagues told me, "They've fallen hard, Tony. Isabella regrets not holding on to you." I felt no satisfaction, only calm acceptance. They were reaping what they had sown. The mighty Cortez family had fallen from the pinnacle of power to having nothing. Manuel and Rosa lived in defeat, regret, and isolation, stripped of their place in the business world. The lavish parties and private jets were gone. They rented a small house on the outskirts and kept out of sight. Isabella, who once shopped without limit, now counted every penny, haunted by the choices she had made. One rainy afternoon, Isabella showed up at my office door. She was lightly dusted with rain, makeup pale, eyes red. Before I could speak, she started, voice trembling. "Tony, can you give me another chance? I was wrong. I know I was wrong. But we can start over, can't we?" I looked at the woman who once told me I had embarrassed her in front of her family, who had chosen power over love. She choked up and began to cry. "I've lost everything. My parents are broken, the company is gone, life is so hard now. I've thought about it a lot. I understand now. I need you, Tony. I really need you." I leaned against my desk, arms folded, listening in silence. When I didn't answer, she cried harder. "Tony, please, give me one chance to make it right. I'll change. I promise. Just say the word." I took a long breath. A part of me had once loved her, or at least believed in that love. But now I saw only a desperate woman who missed the benefits, not the man. I shook my head, gentle but final. "Isabella, it's too late. We crossed a line we can never uncross." She froze, tears falling faster. "Can't you give me one more chance? After everything we had?" I met her eyes. "There never was an us, Isabella. I was just a role in your family. You only remember me now that everything has collapsed. But I found my own path." She bit her lip, trying to stifle the sobs. I finished softly, "Good luck on the road you chose." She stood motionless for a moment, hoping I would relent. I didn't. Finally, she turned and walked away, footsteps echoing down the empty hallway, swallowed by the rain. I closed the door quietly and exhaled. An old chapter closed forever, no regret, no bitterness. Just finality. I chose to let go of resentment. I never pursued further revenge against my former in-laws. Justice had already done its job. I poured everything into Ramirez Logistics, expanding to other states, forming international partnerships. Diego and I moved closer to each other, supporting one another in work and life, making up for all the lost years. He handled legal matters for the company. We had dinner together every week, swapping stories about Dad. "You made the right choice," Diego would say. "Dad would be so proud." I kept offering to repay his share of the inheritance, but he always refused. "That money was always meant for you, Tony. I'm just happy watching you succeed." We hugged, and I knew The bond between brothers was the greatest gift Dad left us. One quiet afternoon, we returned to Ohio and stood silently before Carlos's grave. A cool autumn breeze blew. Dry leaves drifted over the stone. I knelt, brushed my hand across the engraving. Dad, I did it. The company is strong now. Thank you for giving us everything good you had. Diego rested a hand on my shoulder. We stayed there a long while, memories washing over us. Simple meals, nights Dad stayed up working, lessons in resilience. I looked back on the entire journey, from oppression, loss, and betrayal, to rebuilding my life with my own hands. From the day Dad died, Manuel's cold phone call, my sudden resignation, childhood memories, the painful funeral, the surprising will, the secret investigation, returning to the tiger's den, the explosion of scandal, the battlefield of business. Everything felt like a long film full of tears and blood. And I understood. The greatest victory is not defeating others, but refusing to become like them. They once crushed me, yet I did not repay cruelty with cruelty. I chose to build, to be decent. From my own pain, I learned the value of dignity, perseverance, and family. Dad taught me to stand up. Diego fought beside me. Now I live for those things. The story ends with a quiet truth. When a person rises the right way, lets go at the right time, and holds fast to kindness in the end, no matter how brutal the past, it can never change the future. I stood up from Dad's grave, hugged Diego, and we walked home together. The Ohio sky that evening was clear and blue, like a blessing from above. My life, from a poor boy in Ohio to the owner of a thriving company, stands as proof. The anxiety of those early days has been replaced by peace, and somewhere I know Dad is smiling.